Welcome to Oklahoma Music Legends. I'm your host, Tommy Henshaw. When she heard him singing alone in his bedroom, Blake Shelton's mother was over the moon with excitement. In fact, she was so excited that she booked him at the age of 8 into a beauty pageant, whose fellow competitors numbered 50 little girls. Who would have thought this beauty pageant contestant would one day grow up to be named the sexiest man in America? From Ada, Oklahoma, this is Blake Shelton. Stand by for the story. Blake was born to parents Dick Shelton, a car salesman, and Dorothy Shelton, who owned a beauty parlor on June 18, 1976 in Ada, Oklahoma. Ada is a small college town located southeast of Oklahoma City. After the beauty pageant that his mother Dorothy had entered Blake into, he was so embarrassed he vowed to never sing again in public. Lucky for all of us, he changed his mind. And if you're asking, what was the song he sang in the pageant? He sang Bob Seger's tune, Old Time Rock and Roll. No word, though, if he finished in the money. Rather than rock and roll, Blake kept his focus on country music. He says because his uncle Durrell introduced him to the guitar and taught him the three basic chords of C, F, and G. I've heard the definition of country music is three chords and the truth. By the time he reached his teens, Blake was singing and performing in every local honky-tonk around his hometown of Ada that he could get into. He had two siblings, a sister, Indy, and an older half-brother, Richie, who was tragically killed in a traffic accident when Blake was just 14. At 15, Blake wrote his first song, Once in a Long, Long While. He began getting statewide notoriety and a lot of attention when he won the Denbo Diamond Award. This is the top honor for young Oklahoma entertainers. Winning the Denbo Diamond Award, coupled with his growing reputation as a singer, got him a spot to perform on a tribute show to honor Oklahoma native Mae Axton Boren. Mae Boren was a noted Nashville songwriter, producer, record maker. She co-wrote Elvis Presley's career kickoff song, Heartbreak Hotel. And she was also Hoyt Axton's mother. When Mae Boren, who had a reputation for helping young performers, saw Blake perform at her tribute show, she was impressed with the young man and encouraged him to come see her in Nashville. 2 weeks after graduating from Ada High School in 1994, Blake at 17 packed up his belongings, jumped in his old pickup truck, and moved to Nashville, where he reunited with Miss Boren. In fact, she was responsible for getting Blake his first work in Nashville, painting her house. Now, during a recent visit I had to the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame, I was visiting with Ronald Boren, who's the curator of Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame down in Muskogee. It seems during the summer of '94, he and his brother went to Nashville to visit their Aunt Mae Boren. Now, she had a large-style plantation home in Nashville. When they were walking up to the house, they noticed a tall, slender young man wearing cowboy boots, hat, and long-sleeve cowboy shirt, mowing the yard. Sometime later, his brother called him, asking him if he remembered the incident, the guy mowing Aunt Mae's yard, and to which he replied yes, and his brother asked him, he said, do you know who that was? And Ronald said no, and his brother said that was Blake Shelton. Mrs. Mae's son Hoyt had come to stay with her for a while and was living in his tour bus on her driveway. While doing chores around Miss Boren's house, Blake got the chance to get acquainted with Hoyt. Blake would sit in Hoyt's bus, and Hoyt would share some knowledge about the business with him. On Blake's 18th birthday, Hoyt gave him a long Bowie knife. Later, he gave Blake something more valuable. One day on the bus, Hoyt played a song he had written named Old Red. Blake loved it, and Hoyt gave it to him. It would be some 7 to 8 years later before Blake got the chance to record Old Red. For the next several years, between doing odd jobs for Miss Boren and anybody else he could come up with, Blake could be found hustling his talents around town. Also, he could be found playing in some local clubs around Nashville, like Douglas Corner or the Bluebird Cafe. He got a job working for Sony Tree Publishing, making tape copies of writers' songs, but it seems Blake spent way too much time shooting the breeze with the other writers and got fired. During this time, Blake had several of his songs published with Naomi Martin Music, Warner Chappell Music, and Jerry Crutchfield Music. In 1997, Bobby Braddock, who is a member of the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame, got a heads up on Blake. Braddock secured Blake a contract with Tree Productions, and they recorded the song that Hoyt Axton had given him some time earlier. Old Red would be included on Blake's debut album. Blake's first album, self-titled Blake Shelton, was released in 2001, and it included several of the songs that he had written or co-written, such as That's What I Call Home, Every Time I Look at You, Problems at Home, and All Over Me. All Over Me, which was co-written by an idol of Blake's and a mentor, and a pretty fair songwriter and singer himself, Earl Thomas Conley. The first song to be released as a single from the album was Austin. With the release of the album, Blake's star was on the rise. In an interview Blake did years ago, he said the album was done and Giant Record Company called him and wanted him to hear a song they'd found. It was called If You Get to Austin. The name was later changed or shortened to just Austin. Blake said that when they first played it for him, he didn't care much for it, but he agreed to take it home and mess around with it on his guitar. A couple of days later, he returned and agreed to cut the record. He said by taking it home, he was able to work with it and make it his own. Cutting that record was a pretty good decision. Austin would be his first #1 record on Billboard, and Austin would remain in the top spot for 5 continuous weeks. The album received a platinum certification for certified shipments of 1 million albums. Even with his career kickoff that the song Austin afforded him and guaranteed he would no longer have to paint houses or mow lawns unless he wanted to this day, the song that he still considers to be his signature song is the song that Hoyt Axton played him while sitting in May Boren's driveway, Old Red. By the way, it's a crowd favorite to those lucky enough to get a ticket to a Blake Shelton concert. Blake would enjoy #1 charting tunes from his next 2 albums. His second album release, The Dreamer, which achieved solid gold status, produced his next #1 called Baby. This album also produced one of my very favorite Shelton songs, Playboys of the Southwestern World. By the way, it didn't do much on the charts, peaking at 24. But I guess it reminds me of some of my partners and exploits, back in the day. Blake Shelton's Bar and Grill was his third album, which produced his third #1 charting single. It stayed in that position for 4 weeks. That song was entitled Some Beach, and it's another of my personal favorite Shelton songs. Blake Shelton's songs have catchy titles. If there was an award for the best Shelton song titles, and I had a vote, for me it would be a tie between 2 of his songs, Sure Be Cool If You Did, and Mine Would Be You. In total, Blake Shelton has released a total of 11 studio albums, 4 compilation albums, 35 videos, and 39 singles, of which 25 of those singles reached #1 Billboard status, selling over 30 million singles. Up to 2017, Shelton's songs have streamed over 1.7 billion times. In the beginning, he was part of tours with George Strait, Toby Keith, Rascal Flatts twice, and Brad Paisley. Since 2005, he has headlined a total of 9 of his own annual tours. Of course, you can see him twice a year on NBC's The Voice, where he's one of the 2 original stars on the show, a successful judge and coach. And it seems to me he gravitates to young performers who come from Oklahoma or Texas. Funny little side note, he didn't really want to do the show and they had to talk him into it. Blake was inducted into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame in 2014. He became a member of the Grand Ole Opry in 2010. He's the recipient of 9 Country Music Association Awards, 5 Academy of Country Music Awards, and a 55-gallon drum of all kinds of other awards. While Blake lives in Nashville, he also maintains a farm near the town of Tishomingo, Oklahoma. Blake opened his first bar and grill named Old Red in Tishomingo. I'm going to be making a trip down there very soon. Who's up for a road trip? You've been listening to Oklahoma Music Legends. Be sure to like our Oklahoma Music Legends Facebook page. Hey, tell your friends we can be heard on iTunes, Spotify, Buzzsprout, Stitcher, Google Music Play, and directly from our website, OklahomaMusicLegends.com, just by clicking on the podcast page. Soon you'll be able to hear our stories on YouTube. For Oklahoma Music Legends, I'm Tommy Henshaw. Thanks for listening.